Joseph, mate, I was reading this briefing, and it's just grim, isn't it? The sheer scale of humanitarian needs globally. But South Sudan, wow, it sounds absolutely devastating.
Oh, it really is, James. You know, I've been following it closely, and the situation there is it's a textbook example of multiple crises converging. Years of conflict, subnational violence, widespread food insecurity, the climate crisis hitting hard, and public health emergencies. It's a perfect storm, really.
10 million people, mate, for 2026. 2/3 of the population needing some humanitarian help. That's just staggering. How do you even begin to wrap your head around that?
It's immense. And it's not just the numbers, but the complexities. Acute food insecurity, massive displacement, their health and education systems are so fragile, and protection risks, especially for women and children, are significant. Then, the conflict next door in Sudan, it's pushed so many refugees and returnees back, just breaking their host communities and services, you know? And a cholera outbreak too, it adds insult to injury. Exactly, their largest recorded one. And the displaced figures, James, are heartbreaking. 2.3 million internally, nearly 2.4 million refugees, and 65% under 18. It's a youth crisis. And aid workers, still one of the most dangerous places for them.
And then Ukraine, Joseph. 5th year of full-scale war in 2025. I mean, you'd think it would ease up, but it sounds like it's just getting worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking, James. The humanitarian crisis there just remains severe. You know, relentless attacks on civilians, critical infrastructure, it's constant. Recurrent displacement, essential services degrading, it's just relentless. And the hostilities in frontline oblasts, they remain really intense.
I saw that civilian casualties were 31% higher in 2025 than the previous year. That's a huge jump. And the energy infrastructure strikes too, especially with winter approaching, must be absolutely dreadful.
It is. I mean, think about it. Disrupting water, heating, particularly during those harsh winter months, it's a humanitarian nightmare. And we're looking at an estimated 12.7 million people within Ukraine in urgent need of humanitarian assistance in 2025, with almost 2 million children among them. It's immense. Almost 4 million people internally displaced, and another 6.9 million have sought refuge in Europe and beyond. It's just a massive exodus.
So vulnerable groups like older people, those with disabilities, they're facing even higher risks then?
Absolutely. And women and children are sadly susceptible to gender-based violence and exploitation. Even though humanitarians are reaching millions, these funding appeals, they remain significantly underfunded. It's a huge challenge.
Gosh. And then we shift to the occupied Palestinian territory, Joseph. Gaza, the briefing calls it catastrophic. That's a strong word, but given what we're hearing, it seems utterly justified.
Catastrophic doesn't even begin to cover it, James, honestly. The escalation of hostilities from October 2023, it just resulted in unprecedented destruction, immense suffering. Tens of thousands of Palestinian casualties, and nearly all of Gaza's 2.1 million people displaced, many without sufficient shelter, food, life-saving medical services, clean water, education, livelihoods. It's a complete collapse.
Even with a ceasefire in October 2025, it still sounds like things haven't really improved, have they?
No, they haven't. The humanitarian situation remains catastrophic. Severe malnutrition, it's reached alarming levels. And the obstacles and restrictions on aid delivery, they just continue to impede any meaningful humanitarian response. The infrastructure damage is just extensive, Many wells, water tanks destroyed. Only 55% of pre-war desalination capacity is operational. It's dire. And winter storms too, adding to the misery. Yeah, late 2025 winter storms exacerbated it all. Reported deaths, widespread flooding, tens of thousands of tents and makeshift shelters just damaged. And in the West Bank, Palestinians face a coercive environment, excessive use of force, demolitions, settlement expansion, settler violence. And throughout most of 2025, Gaza remained the most dangerous place in the world for aid workers. Just awful.
It seems like beneath all these humanitarian disasters, there's a deep political undercurrent, isn't there, Joseph? decisions, or lack thereof, by leaders directly impact these vulnerable populations.
Absolutely, James. From internal conflict to the international community's inability to broker peace, it's the political will, or its absence, that dictates the crisis's severity and duration.
And those aid restrictions, like in Gaza, that's not just logistical, it's a political blockade, isn't it? A deliberate action with dire consequences for civilians.
Precisely. Access for the desperate is often weaponized, a political bargaining chip. The most vulnerable pay the highest price for power struggles and political maneuvering.
So people in need are essentially people caught in the crossfire of political agendas, local and international.
Exactly. Failure of governance, pursuit of power over people, geopolitical chess games. These translate directly into shattered lives, hunger, displacement, and profound despair from millions.
Africa as a whole, then. The brief says unprecedented humanitarian needs across various regions. That sounds like a continent-wide struggle, doesn't it?
It truly is, James. Africa is experiencing these massive needs driven by a whole mix: armed conflict, poverty, climate change, food insecurity, political instability. In 2025, approximately 134 million people across Africa needed humanitarian assistance. That's nearly 45% of the global caseload. Conflict is really the primary driver. It's tripled the number of people displaced by violence from 11 million in 2015 to 34 million in 2024. Just huge numbers.
And disease outbreaks are surging too. Cholera, measles, malaria. It's like a perfect storm on top of the other storms.
Precisely. Worsened by conflict, by climate disasters, limited healthcare access. The Sahel region, DR Congo, the Horn of Africa, are particularly affected. And Nigeria, in 2024, had the highest number of food insecure individuals in Africa, 25 million people. Chad also grappling with a growing and complex crisis from protracted conflict, refugee influxes, hunger, climate change. It's just relentless across the board.
Even Somalia, still battling natural disasters like flooding, and then the security landscape on top.
Yeah, Somalia. 4.3 million people experiencing crisis levels of food insecurity. And despite all these soaring needs, James, the humanitarian response efforts are just facing huge challenges: restricted access and severe funding shortfalls. It's a constant battle.
So, pulling all of this together, Joseph, it paints a pretty bleak global picture. Nearly 300 million people needing humanitarian assistance and protection in 2024. That's just mind-boggling, isn't it?
It absolutely is, James. And, that figure reflects a really complex mix of crises: natural disasters, conflicts, economic shocks, hunger, disease. The world is just experiencing more entrenched conflicts now, and the consequences for civilians are simply devastating. It's a grim reality check for all of us.
And food insecurity, again, coming up as a massive driver. 258 million people across 58 countries, primarily because of armed conflict, economic shocks, climate extremes, just everything converging.
Exactly. And over 110 million people forcibly displaced from their homes worldwide. That number alone, it's just staggering, isn't it? The scale of human movement, searching for safety, for survival. In 2024, the UN and partner organizations appealed for $46.4 billion to assist 180.5 million people across 72 countries. The Middle East and North Africa, by the way, requiring the largest portion of this funding.
Right. And I imagine those funding gaps are a huge problem, aren't they?
Oh, they're critical. These funding shortfalls continue to leave millions in crisis, forcing organizations to scale down or even completely shut down operations. It's a constant struggle to meet the needs, and it just shows how much more needs to be done,
Joseph, with 110 million people forcibly displaced, how have global immigration policies responded to such movements?
James, a noticeable global shift towards more restrictive policies has emerged, often driven by nationalism and security concerns. It's a challenging political landscape.
President Trump's administration was particularly active here. What key immigration policies did he enforce?
his administration enacted controversial measures: the travel ban on several Muslim-majority countries, zero tolerance leading to family separations, increased deportations, and border wall efforts. These significantly aimed to curb immigration.
And how did the world react to these specific policies? Reaction was largely critical. International organizations and allies raised deep concerns over humanitarian impacts and perceived discrimination. It strained diplomatic relations, fueling debate on international refugee law and human rights. Global discourse on migration became highly polarized.
Joseph, given those increasingly restrictive immigration policies, what's their practical impact on millions displaced? Surely it worsens their plight.
It absolutely does, James. These shifts, often political, create immense aid bottlenecks and limit protection. Humanitarian work becomes incredibly difficult. Borders are walls, not pathways to safety.
So these policies fundamentally contradict humanitarian principles, denying refuge to those in need.
Precisely. Effects are devastating. Prolonged displacement, increased suffering, and a breakdown of vital international cooperation. This fuels xenophobia, complicating refugee integration.
It sounds like humanitarians battle policies as much as crises.
Exactly. This demands a more humane, coordinated global migration approach, prioritizing human dignity and international law over short-sighted political agendas. The suffering demands it.
Joseph, on a different note, the briefing mentioned Greenland. What's the Greenland crisis referring to exactly? Is it climate-related or something else entirely?
James, it's predominantly climate-driven. The unprecedented rate of ice melt in Greenland isn't just an environmental concern, it's rapidly transforming into a significant humanitarian and geopolitical challenge. Coastal communities are facing displacement, and traditional livelihoods are collapsing.
So it's not just about sea levels rising globally, but immediate displacement and disruption for the local population there. That's a direct and severe impact.
Precisely. We're seeing infrastructure degradation, increased food insecurity as marine ecosystems shift, and immense pressure on sparse public services from internal migration. The indigenous Inuit population, in particular, is disproportionately affected.
And given its strategic location, I imagine this also draws international attention beyond purely humanitarian concerns. Absolutely. The melting ice opens new shipping routes and access to resources, escalating geopolitical interest and potential for external exploitation, adding layers of complexity to an already dire humanitarian situation. Joseph, we've painted a stark picture of global crises. South Sudan, Ukraine, Gaza, Africa, and now Greenland's climate crisis. It's overwhelming. Where do we even begin to find solutions amidst such complexity?
James, the sheer scale demands more than just responsive aid. We need systemic, coordinated solutions. It's about addressing root causes: climate change, governance failures, political will, and equitable resource distribution.
So moving beyond just emergency relief, we're talking about long-term development, peace building, and climate adaptation, all interwoven.
Precisely. For instance, in places like Greenland, investing in sustainable infrastructure and supporting indigenous adaptation strategies is crucial. Globally, it means strengthening international law, ensuring accountability, and robustly funding multi-sectoral programs that build resilience. And the funding gaps you mentioned earlier, that's a huge hurdle to any meaningful long-term solution, isn't it? Absolutely. Without sustained, predictable funding, these holistic approaches are impossible. It requires political leaders to commit not just to aid, but to long-term investment in stability and prevention, understanding that today's crises are tomorrow's disasters without proactive solutions.
So Joseph, if sustained funding and proactive solutions are the key, how do we actually foster that international cooperation? It sounds like a monumental task given the political hurdles we've discussed.
That's precisely where diplomacy and multilateral institutions become paramount. We must strengthen global governance frameworks, ensuring that international agreements on aid, climate action, and refugee protection are not just ratified, but rigorously implemented and adequately resourced.
But with so many different national interests at play, how do you ensure accountability for these agreements? It often seems like promises are made, but delivery falls short.
Accountability is non-negotiable. It requires robust monitoring mechanisms, transparent reporting, and sanctions for non-compliance. Ultimately, it's about recognizing our shared humanity and collective responsibility, moving towards a paradigm where global challenges are met with unified, rights-based responses.
A unified, rights-based response. It sounds like an ideal, but one that is absolutely essential for the millions we've discussed today.
Indeed, the alternative is continued suffering on an imaginable scale. True human rights solutions demand unwavering political will and a commitment to genuine solidarity